What's going on, guys? This is Foresight Capital, and today we're going to take a look at 3 stocks that ARK Invest keeps buying in very large quantities, and they've now become a very large portion of ARK Invest's overall portfolios. Now, ARK Invest is known for having some very highly performing ETFs. In fact, a lot of them are the highest performing year to date and over the past 5 years, and a lot of their ETFs are actually the highest performing ETFs in the tech sector since inception on an average annual return basis. So when ARK is buying stocks, it's important to know because these are stocks that obviously have potential for outsized growth over other tech stocks that you may be trading. Now, what I find interesting about each of these 3 companies is that they're already pretty large, mature companies, but ARK Invest is still plowing many millions of dollars into them every single day and every single week. So we're going to take a look at that, and I use lucidtracking.com, which is a premium website that allows us to track each of the ETFs and the buying and selling action. I'm not affiliated with Lucid Tracking in any way, but I think it's a great website if you're interested in learning about what ARK Invest is both buying and selling each day. All that I ask is that if this video brings you value, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And we'll scroll on down here to the top 20 daily capital injection. Daily capital injection just means basically the most dollar value that they put into stocks on a given day. And what I noticed is just below Tesla, we've got 3 very large, mature companies that ARK Invest keeps plowing money into. And it really has kind of raised my attention because when you look at the overall holdings of these portfolios, they become very large weighting-wise within portfolios. We can see that Roku is now 5% of ARK Invest's total invested capital. Square is about 4.5%, and Teledoc is 3.75%, and they're consistently buying more. So we'll kind of start here with Teledoc. Teledoc is a very big healthcare company. Your employer may provide a service through Teledoc. The big thing is that you can actually see a doctor basically through your phone, be prescribed medications. You can ask and have questions answered. It's a really nice service, and it's growing, especially in a world where it's just easier to do a lot of prescribing over the phone. And so I think a lot of employers are picking up their services, and they're growing exponentially. We can see here that ARK is also growing their holdings within Teledoc very exponentially. So basically towards the end of October, they started an extreme buying action, and we saw them go from just over 1 million shares, 1.2 million. And when they started buying shares, they're really doing it in very big increments. And over the past couple of trading days, we've seen ARK Invest buy from about 5 million shares to just over 6 million shares. So 1 million shares worth of Teledoc. We can see here that they've spent $104 million on Teledoc shares just this past trading week alone, and they've grown the weighting of Teledoc in the portfolio from under 4% to about 4.25%. So they're really growing their overall holdings in Teledoc. Now, if we pull up Thinkorswim here and we type in Teledoc's ticker symbol TDOC, we can see that they've been on a pretty steady incline over the past couple of trading days, and ARK is still cramming money into them. So I'm thinking that ARK is really looking for a push back towards all-time highs in the $20.15 per share range. I'm sorry, that's 20-day highs. For a pushback to all-time highs to about the $253 per share range, which would give this thing about 25% to run. But we can see that they're very bullish overall on Teledoc. Now the next stock down here is Square. Square is a company that I love, and I've known for quite some time that Square was going to be a huge company because so many small businesses use Square as their primary payment acceptance method, and Square is now branching out into so many different revenue streams that they've got a very big grasp on a lot of the peer-to-peer payments. And I think it's just going to be a great company for overall growth. We can see here that ARK actually was buying Square pretty heavily for most of the past quarter, but they had a bit of time where they actually sold some shares in Square. So they went from about $5.4 million down to about 4.9, and even sold off just a little bit more after buying a couple more over the next couple of weeks. And then since basically the middle of November, we've seen consistent buying action. They added about $35 million just this past week and $51 million the week before, so the week of December 11th, bringing their total to about $86–87 million worth of buying just in the past 2 weeks in Square. And if we take a look at Square's chart over on TD Ameritrade, we can see that they've also been consistently increasing in price basically since the middle of November. So even though Square is going up in price, ARK is still buying it on a consistent basis, adding to a very bullish position. And that leads me to think that they think that Square is also going to continue to break out to new highs. Now, one thing you have to worry about with Square is they've had an absolutely insane year, going from about $32 lows to about 237 highs, and this is all-time highs. So we just saw a bit of an indecision candle on close of business Friday that could lend to a small pullback, and it will be interesting to see if ARK Invest keeps buying Square on the dip or if they take their profits, because they've been buying very heavily during this run-up. And while it doesn't look very big, this is almost $50 per share from $180 basically in the middle of November, which is a very substantial return on investment, pushing near about 25 to 30% still, just in that month and a half time frame that we were talking about. And the last stock here, Roku, is actually, to my knowledge, their highest holding in any of their ETFs at over 5% total weighting. And we can see here that basically since the beginning of November, they've started an exponential buying process in Roku, where they had just 3.4 million shares at the lows at the beginning of November and now have 4.7 million shares of Roku. We can also see here that they've plowed over $100 million into Roku in just the past 2 weeks alone, and have been buying very consistent amounts. Outside of this $9 million buying operation the week of November 20th, we've seen consistently over $20 million and pushing $40 or $60 million every single week of buying operations in Roku. Now, if we take a look here at the TD Ameritrade chart and pull up Roku, we can see that yet again, much like Square's price action, they've had an absolutely insane year, from lows of about $58 per share all the way up to $352.12. And we saw a bit of a pullback on Friday, but that's honestly not to be a concern when we've had such a big run up. Sort of the same deal here. They started buying back in the beginning of November to middle of November, and ever since then we've seen a price increase of almost $90 per share in Roku since that time. And depending on the day, we've actually seen as high as $120 increase in value per share since ARK has started buying very heavily. So we can see here that they're getting into these stocks. Even though they're setting new highs, they're still consistently buying these stocks, which leads me to believe that there's a lot more room to run with these particular stocks, compared to some of the other stocks that are out there. Now, what's also interesting is they did buy $26 million worth of Tesla, even though it was breaking out the highs, but it did dip off just before market close. And we can see here that they have 8.2% of their total funds invested in Tesla now. But outside of Tesla, which is kind of an outsider or outlier in pretty much any portfolio, these are three very big companies that are still breaking out the highs that ARK is still interested in buying. So just kind of wanted to shed some light on that. Leave a comment down below on which stock you'd want to see me do a deep dive on in the future. I really appreciate, again, if this video brought you value, that you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, because it helps the channel reach more people. I appreciate you watching till the end. Catch you in the next one.